With how popular the Heroes of Might and Magic series is, I'm always surprised that there aren't other games that try to capture the same feel and gameplay. There are things like Age of Wonders, which skews a little bit more towards the 4X style of game, and things like King's Bounty, which are not only a predecessor but sort of spiritual sequel to the Heroes of Might and Magic series. But nothing really hits on the same note, except for the game that we're going to be talking about today, which is Disciples: The Sacred Lands.
Chaos. Chaos was inevitable. The signs aligned themselves as an ill omen. Havoc is upon the lands, and history will be written with the blood of the vanquished. For as the stars bejewel the darkening sky, evil, lurking in obscurity, is twisting and corrupting souls. The gods themselves watch silently as the disciples prepare their minions for the tasks ahead. Chaos has begun anew. 4 realms will wage war, sealing the fate of their race and ensuring the existence of their gods. Bethrazan, Prince of Darkness, Monarch of the Legions of the Damned. Wotan, Guardian of the Sacred Forge and God of the Mountain Clans. Mortis, Creator of Plague and Pestilence, Master of the undead hordes. The High Father, God of Light, Grand Protector of the Empire. Cowards should not venture out in the dark ages to come, as many will die and blood will flow relentlessly upon the battlefields. For it is the victor in battle who writes history.
Disciples: The Sacred Lands was developed by Strategy First, a company well known for its Jagged Alliance series. This is the closest thing that I found that comes to the ideas and feel and game flow of Heroes in Might and Magic, while tweaking certain things that I think are actually make the gameplay a lot better. I originally had played the second game in the series a long time ago. I used to own a physical copy of it back when I was putting CDs in, like, CD drives.
Crazy stuff.
And I kind of fell in love with it. It wasn't until much later that I got to go back and play this one. So, without further ado, let's look at what Disciples has to offer. First of all, let's start with the basics. When you load up a new game, you are first given the option of 4 different races. The Empire, a typical Arthurian medieval race composed of human knights, angels, priests, and wizards. The Undead Hordes, an undead race of skeletons, vampires, and undead dragons. The Mountain Clans, a typical fantasy dwarf race with heavy Norse mythology, as well as giants. And finally, the Legions of the Damned, which is a race made up of your typical Judeo-Christian representation of demons, complete with pyromancers, gargoyles, and actual Satan himself. Once you've picked your starting race, you will then be given a choice of 3 different lords. The Warrior, who regenerates 15% of their party's health every turn. The Wizard, who can cast 2 spells per turn and has access to 5th level spells, as well as spells being half as expensive to research. And the Guildmaster, which gives thief units access to more thief actions, as well as a 50% discount on upgrading towns. The flow of the game is very familiar for anyone who's played Heroes of Might and Magic as well, though it's a little bit more simplified and, to my mind, a little bit better focused. You control parties that are led by heroes of the 3 types mentioned above, Warrior, Mage, or Guildmaster. You always start with a hero of your corresponding Lord type, but any other hero can be hired from the capital. You move your heroes around the map, attacking monster parties, raiding neutral towns and ruins, and capturing resources. Unlike in Heroes of Might and Magic, there are only 5 resources in the game. Gold is used for all of your unit purchases, as well as upgrading cities and building new buildings. The other 4 resources, being 4 different types of mana, are used for researching and casting spells. You can only make use of a resource that is within your race's influence. The capital, as well as any town that you own, will slowly convert surrounding neutral or enemy territory to your own type at the beginning of every turn. For places that your influence can't reach naturally, each race also has access to a hero called a Rod Bearer. These heroes are unique in that they are not really meant for combat, more for scouting and placing rods, an ability unique to them. For 150 gold, you can place a rod anywhere on the map, and it will convert a small patch around it to your race's territory. The final hero type is the Thief. A thief is similar to a spy or a diplomat in other 4X games. They can't lead armies or level up from experience, but they have high movement and have special interactions with cities, ruins, and enemy parties. They can infiltrate an enemy race and allow you to see enemy races' parties as well as what's in their cities. Poison enemy parties, which does a small amount of damage to every unit, as well as challenging the leader unit to a duel, which might handicap their ability to move around the map. As I mentioned before, if you chose the Guildmaster as your starting lord, you also get access to a couple of other commands lords don't get. These are to rearrange an enemy party in a way that might expose weaker backline units to the front line, steal gold, items, or artifacts from a party that is holding them, and if they are a member of an enemy race, the ability to bribe them into an alliance. You can also assassinate weak units in a party, which, depending on how strong the party is, might be incredibly powerful. Combat is also very different than Heroes of Might and Magic. Instead of playing out like a war game on a hex-based grid, battles take place on a turn-based system very similar to something like a JRPG. Each party is made up of 6 locations where a unit can be placed, 3 in the front and 3 in the back. Races have access to both melee and ranged units, and depending on where you place them, you can attack different positions in the enemy's lineup. The front 3 melee positions only can attack adjacent squares to them in the front line, so characters in the outer 2 positions only have access to the 2 positions directly adjacent to them, while the middle position has access to all 3 frontline positions, but is also vulnerable to attacks from all 3 frontline positions. Though this is a pretty simple setup as far as mechanics go, there's a surprising amount of depth to be found. Party composition and positioning is huge and sometimes can make the difference between a victory and a defeat. One of the things that I think is particularly cool about this game is it does a really good job of giving you complete information on the enemies you are facing. From the battle screen, if you right-click on any of the units, it will pull up a full information sheet on them showing their HP, damage, initiative, if they have armor, if they are immune or ward any particular sources of damage, what source of damage their own attack is, etc. If there are any buffs or debuffs, those will also be shown right on the information screen as well. It feels pretty revolutionary to give you such easy access to all of the information in the game itself. It would have been pretty common for the time to have all of that information relegated to the manual. You would always have to be looking back at that manual to find the information. It's a lot less tedious and really convenient to be able to check it whenever you need to. I also feel like they did a really good job differentiating the races. For the time, it would be fairly common for an RTS to have 2 different races, but not have them be actually different units, just reskinning or putting different portraits on them. Maybe having a few unique units each, but mostly being the same thing. It seems like they've gone out of their way to make quite a bit of difference between the actual races themselves. This is mostly accomplished by having different upgrade trees available to each unit for each race, giving them different attributes or changing the way their attacks work or effects. Each faction's units are broken up into fighter, range, mage, and support. Each of these have buildings that allow you to progress that unit down the progression tree, but many of the trees also have branches that might not have further development paths, or change the way that the unit develops completely. For instance, looking at the Knight and the Witch Hunter from the Empire, you'll see that after level up, you can either choose to become a Knight or a Witch Hunter. The Knights have much higher HP, while the Witch Hunters gain immunity to attacks from the mind source. In the game, this is things like paralysis and fear. This would be a good upgrade path to choose if you are fighting against Legions of the Damned or the Undead Hordes, as they both have support characters that do mind attacks. However, if you were in a map where you're facing off against the Mountain Clans, it might be less useful of an upgrade since you wouldn't be making as much use of those immunities. Another example from the Empire is that they are the only race that has access to healing in battle. Their branch right at the beginning allows you to choose either the Priest, who heals 40 HP to a single target, or the Cleric, who heals 20 HP to the whole party. Looking at the Legion of the Damned, for instance, we can see that they have 2 units that take up 2 spaces in the party, the Gargoyle and the Devil. The Gargoyle may seem weak at first, but it's one of the only units that starts out with natural armor and can attack 1 unit in any position, making it not a terrible choice to start out as a tank and also giving it a lot of range. The Devil is similar, but starts off tanky and then at the end can branch into a unit that does 70 damage to all units or 40 damage to 1. This incredible diversity lends itself well to strategic planning and play when making decisions. Each race also has access to a different array of spells as well, with the first 2 levels only requiring the race's primary mana type, and the higher levels requiring as much as 2, 3, and for the final level, all 4 types of mana. The 2 good races generally have a mix of healing, buffs, and direct damage and summon spells, where the 2 evil races have the same, but with debuffs instead of buffs. And while it feels like there's a little bit less diversity among the spell lists, there is some unique features to each. For instance, the Empire is the only race with access to warding spells, which nullify the first damage in a battle from a specific elemental type. Another kind of strange way that this game diversifies itself from its Heroes of Might and Magic counterpart is the way that it handles races' capitals. Each race has a unique unit that guards their capital and can never be taken out of it. They are without a doubt some of the strongest units in the game and cannot usually be taken down by normal means. There are videos that you can find on YouTube, but essentially you'd have to pile on a lot of artifacts, items, potions, and buffs to even have a fighting chance. Instead of capturing the capital as being your primary goal for each map, you have much smaller quest goals, such as capturing specific neutral cities, raiding specific ruins, or converting a percentage of the map to your race's influence. With all the good things I have to say for this game though, there are some areas where it still drags. It's by no means a perfect game. First and foremost, it's important to know right off the bat that this is an incredibly slow-moving game. In the early game, you are incredibly resource poor. I often found myself just sitting around in town waiting for enough money to build up so I could buy more buildings, hire new parties, or heal my units. On only the second map of the Empire campaign, it took me a whole 3 hours to complete, the game itself taking about 30 or 40, which is roughly about 10 hours per race, which is certainly an impressive amount of gameplay time for the decade, but for my money, makes the game start to drag a little. Oftentimes, I would find myself using cheats to get resources or restore my hero's movement points in order to make maps go a little bit faster and get a little bit more out of each turn. While I praised the unit advancement tree earlier, I don't think it's perfectly implemented. There are often times when branches dead-end you in a place where units aren't as good as what their higher tier equivalents would be, and since units don't level up past what their highest tier is on an advancement tree, sometimes you can accidentally handicap yourself by sticking with a lower tier when you're outclassed by higher tier monsters. Take for instance the Legions of the Damned mage tree, which gets a branch at the very top of it to turn its mages, which do a little bit of fire damage to everyone in the party, into witches, which can cast fear on one unit. In the game, fear is a status effect that makes a unit run away from the battle. While this can be used to tactically get rid of problematic enemies in a party, I think its usefulness overall is outclassed by getting more damage output to everyone across the party. Overall, I enjoyed my time with this game, and I think I would recommend it to most people that are either interested in old PC classics that they might not have played back in the day, or generally people that are interested in the 4X genre. I think the art style is really cool, the hand-drawn sort of ink style of it all looks really nice, and the 3D renders in the battle scenes are surprisingly intricate for being what they are and being so basic. It's available on both Steam and GOG right now, though generally speaking I would trust the GOG release to be more stable than the Steam release because GOG has a better track record in that case. Also, if you're a person that is bothered by very small resolutions, there's a wrapper mod that you can find that allows you to display it in higher resolution, push it out into window mode, as well as a host of other graphical updates and options for game speed. Myself personally, I don't think it looks that bad in native resolution, but I know that for some people that can be really off-putting, so there are options in case you're worried about that. Thank you once again for joining me. I hope you found this video interesting. Undoubtedly, I will do another video on the second game in the franchise, and actually I kind of want to follow the franchise as it goes, because I think as it goes on, specifically looking at the third and fourth installment, they start to shift back towards just straight up Heroes and Might and Magic, which I think is a bad move for the series. So that'll be fun to kind of chart as we go along. As always, if you like what you see here, please engage with the YouTube algorithm, hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you want to get more videos. Hopefully you all are doing well, and and I love you, and I hope you have a good life.